it felt like I was pissing and no urine was coming out. I realized they still had the condom on. Porn's not helping at all with that. And I think, I watched porn solidly from 13 to 30. One of the best decisions I ever made was giving up porn. I went with a friend to Cheltenham horse racing. Lost on every race, basically. Continued drinking. I ended up waking up in the stairwell of the University of Gloucester's Halls of Residence, God knows, 7 a.m. in the morning, just covered in urine. So, yeah, that's one of the worst.
Welcome to another episode of the Old Paratrooper podcast. But before we get started, I want to talk to you about our sponsors, Veterans for Veterans. If you left the military after 1987 and your hearing's taken a knock from your time in the services, click the link in this video. No win, no fee. See if you're eligible.
Hi, my name's Tom Jenkins and welcome to the Old Paratrooper podcast. Today we're going to be covering all things drinking, drugs, sexual disasters and the journey to turning that round.
Welcome, Tom. Absolute pleasure to have you on. As you quite rightly said, not my usual guest, but your story was kind of thrust in front of me and I thought, you know what? I kind of like that. I like where you've come from, what you've experienced and how you've kind of turned your life around. So we'll get into that. But the first question I have for you, what's your take and what do you think is toxic masculinity?
Yeah, it's certainly the big one with that Louis Theroux documentary. And at this moment, I think it's hard for me to answer. I'm not one to sit here and judge, look at those people on that documentary. It's not how I view masculinity in every way, but I just think we're all doing our best to get by. And, I just tell my story. I've made a million mistakes. Who am I to sit here and judge somebody else? But I think it's just leading people down a dishonest path, losing integrity. The second you lose that trust, that especially from the military listeners who are listening here, if you don't have trust in a squadron, in anything, the whole foundation on what it's built on breaks down. And I think that's really it. When masculinity becomes toxic, it's when you're beginning to lie and manipulate for your own personal benefit.
Yeah, I happen to agree with you that is probably a big part of it. Integrity is fundamental in the military. And I believe in life. If you've not got integrity, if you're a liar, if you're, you treat people badly, you're not a very nice person, all these kind of things. And obviously the toxic masculinity thing is big news at the minute. It's all over the place because of the Louis Theroux documentary, quite rightly. But what I like to do, Tom, is this podcast is all about you, about your story. I want to start at the beginning, the way it'll work. I kind of get when you really started to have problems. I'd like to get a little bit of a background about that before you, where you grew up, whereabouts you're from, all that kind of stuff. But when it went wrong and you realize you had a problem, and basically we'll talk about how you fixed it and how you did stuff. So yeah, whereabouts you from originally, Tom?
Yeah, from near Guildford, just outside London.
Yeah, know it well.
Yeah, so I grew up in a good background, fortunate, good family, never had financial issues, stayed together and sort of one of the lucky ones. So I never liked to, tell some sob story. It was my journey downwards was very much sort of through my own making and my own mistakes. I was lacking, I can't ever pinpoint exactly where it came from, but my self-confidence and self-worth as the early teenage years, sort of when you get those new feelings, the testosterone begins to kick in, you're going through puberty and things change a lot. I just started to lose self-worth. And how I covered that up, it really as 14, 15 began to drink, to to very extreme levels. Now, never an alcoholic, you know, I like to make that shift. It was when I began, I wouldn't stop. If I stayed in, if I was on my own Monday to Thursday, I'd be fine. I wouldn't touch alcohol at all. But if I went out to a party on the weekend, I'd be the guy who ended up in the corner, vomiting on the floor, having no idea, you know, waking up, having no idea what happened the night before. Gambling came into that as well. Again, not every day. I wasn't losing all my money every second, but when I began, that stop switch, and it's sort of that snowball effect and that downward spiral, where the more I drank, the more I gambled, the less confidence I would have. And it just went round and round in circles. Now, where I realized I had to change and I had problems, I was actually 20 before the first time I tried cocaine. And I said I was functional, I could work, I could save money, and then I'd just blow out. Anyway, I traveled to Brazil with a friend of mine, had never tried cocaine. We went to one of the favelas there, the Brazilian term for a shanty town, with a local guy who was just from there. A lot of cocaine, amazing places, beautiful people. It's sort of the backstory. People like me going there to try drugs with gangs. Sounds a bit weird when I talk about it now, but tried
Yeah,
a load of
I'd have to agree with that. It does sound a bit odd. Yeah, yeah.
So this is where I first tried cocaine. Went back to the hostel. God knows why. This was back in the main tourist area. Threw a load of stuff around the room. Some of it mine, some of it not mine. Was completely drunk as well. Hadn't paid my bill. Very embarrassed in the morning. Like, had that just shame. And the way I dealt with it was I did a runner from the hostel without paying my bill, having thrown a load of stuff around after trying cocaine in a Brazilian favela ravaged by past violence for the substance. And I was on a 12-hour flight back to London with all of this on top of myself, and something inside of me, and I've just written a book that goes through all of this. This was the point where it starts at, was just like, this has to change. Like, I'm not just upsetting myself, I'm upsetting others, and I'm just causing my own destruction. So yeah, that's it in short.
Yeah, fair play. So you talk about the book, but before the book, who were you when no one was really watching? Because we talk about masking. Now, we all have certain masks and stuff like that. I believe for myself, after the years on this planet, 46 of them, what you see is what you get with me. I'm the same on a podcast as I am behind closed doors, I like to think. But obviously, you talk about before the book, you was this kind of person that was going down a rabbit hole. So what were you really like when no one was watching?
I was, and I say this in the book as well, I was just a nice, kind, timid kid. There's not, the difference is sort of that 1%. I just made very bad choices, and I lost a lot of like self-control under the substances. But a lot of people who have sort of, you know, my parents' friends who didn't see behind really everything was going on with the drinking was, we all knew you as a nice, kind kid, always a little shy, always a little lacking that self-confidence. My comfort zone was pretty small. And to get out of that, sort of that's when I turned to the substances. And, you know, sexually was always, I was slow starting, very nervous, and that was always, you know, with females, always a disaster, just because I didn't have that confidence. But again, what I was like when I was nobody's watching, I just wanted to live a good, honest, kind life, but I just messed up a lot along the way.
Well, we talk about the culture. And I don't know if the fact that you were in London had anything to do with it, or you were working in that London, but the many men fall into this culture and routine of working Monday to Friday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, out on the ale, coke, back to work Monday. That seems to be the kind of culture. Would you say that was pretty much how your life was rolling?
Yeah, I had good people around me as well, but yeah, most of my circles, it was very much, well, what do you do? Or you get to Friday, you go out, you get to Saturday, you go out. And I had this predicament. I also knew where it'd end up, so often I wouldn't go out, but I didn't want to be sat in on my own, either watching whatever film was on. There was no Netflix back then. So it's like I didn't want to go out because I knew where it would end up. I didn't want to stay in because I'd be lonely, and I was in that predicament. And when your life's built, your circle's built a lot around that going out, then yeah, it became very difficult and a constant struggle.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, if I'd have met you at your worst, what would I have seen?
I mean, the amount of stories I've got of just, I've got say gambling and drinking combined. Went with a friend to Cheltenham horse racing. Lost on every race basically. Went out, don't really remember any of it. Continued drinking. Didn't know where I was staying. I was staying with a friend of my friends. He ended up in a strip club. I ended up waking up in the stairwell of the University of Gloucester's Halls of Residence. I've never been here, don't know how I get there. There's urine in the corner of the stairwell, and some guy, obviously from his, like, kicking me, not like to hurt me, just kicking me to be like, "What are you doing? Get out of here." He searched me before going out to make sure I hadn't stolen anything. Had no phone, no wallet, no keys. Didn't know where I was. And yeah, this is where I woke up at, God knows, 7 a.m. in the morning, just covered in urine. So yeah, that's one of the worst.
So yeah, again, and we see this. This happens. I'm from a military background. I talked about this yesterday on a podcast with someone, and I was on about like the culture of the military, the culture of young men, regardless, probably university, young men of a certain age is. I think we're having a shift now. I think we're shifting away from a drinking culture, but there is very much in young men a drinking and drug culture, isn't there?
Yeah, for sure. And it's really is encouraging to see that people are turning away from this. Unfortunately, I think they're kind of turning more towards technology and getting lost in that
Yeah,
world, which I don't know which one's better or worse.
yeah, true.
But yeah, sort of back in my circles, yeah, it completely was the culture. And yeah, my cousins, he came through Sandhurst, and the military as well. And I've seen, um, yeah, that culture, with him as well, and a lot of drinking. I mean, they used to go out in Guildford. It's
Yeah,
near Aldershot,
yeah,
as
yeah,
you all know. So
yeah.
you see it every weekend there.
And what I kind of find with that as well, and I think people mask their kind of mental health a lot of time with the drinking. And these guys, like you've talked about, you've gone out on a messy one, on a bender. You woke up in a doorwell, pissed yourself or whatever has happened. Um, and you come back and you tell the rest of the lads and you joke about it and you go, "Oh, it's a funny story." The reality is, these people that are in these positions more often than not are struggling. And a lot of men chase these things thinking they'll make them happy. They've got the stories, the money, the gambling, the women, the alcohol. But what does it actually give you? What did it actually give you?
Yeah, yeah, I laughed about it so much in the morning as well, but really behind that laughter, sure, you're with your mates, there is a little bit of that, but actually what's under the surface of that is something I hated it. I knew I didn't want to be doing it from the very first moment. What it gave me was a few hours of escape from myself. I was struggling inside, I was struggling with the confidence, I was struggling with where I wanted to go with life. And well, once you're a few drinks in, you've lost that. You're gone. and you've got this little respite. The trouble is, when you wake up the next morning, especially if you've done something really stupid, like you're in a far worse place than before, and you've got the shame and you've got the guilt, and however much you try and laugh it off, um, that stays there. And kind of the only way to take the edge off is to go back in again, or to hide from yourself. And I chose both. I sort of did hide a lot, did the stayed away from a month, stayed in, as I've talked about before. But again, I wasn't doing anything positive either. So it was just easier to just keep relying on whatever substance was there.
So would you say, obviously you were running from something, so would you say like you were running from your own insecurities?
Oh, 100%. I was incredible, unbelievably insecure. And yeah, just escaping from that, or just being able to be in my comfort zone was the size of I don't know, a size of a £1 coin. If I went out there, I couldn't function. I couldn't be with myself, unless there was a little drink on top, or a lot of drink on top. So yeah, 100% hiding from that insecurity.
So would you say you was good at pretending you were all right for a long while?
Uh, I think it was hard because of the states I'd end up in so much of the time. I mean, the thing was, a lot of the people I was hanging around with were also ending up in. I think I was the worst, but they were also in a similar kind of vibe. So it just kind of became normal around us. But I think, if you looked from a slightly outside perspective, you could see something was very wrong. But yeah, I mean, to my parents, I lied, and I was pretty good at lying. And as I say, I was a nice, kind, timid kid. I'd go and stay with them. And when I wasn't going out, well, I wasn't drinking either. So I could just sit in and watch a film, and things did kind of look normal. So I think people knew on the surface level something wasn't quite right, but how deep of a problem it was, I'd say I was lying and covering that over.
Yeah, it's a common thing. It does happen. Um, you know, in hindsight now, you're looking back at it, which is brilliant. Hindsight is a brilliant thing. You can look back with experience and go, well, I had this, I had this. But at the time, you don't know what's happening. You just kind of living your life and making the best and making these mistakes and doing, you know, why do you think it is that men struggle? Because I talk about, and obviously mental health plays a part. Obviously, with everything that you've got going on at the time, drugs, alcohol, your mental health would have probably took a negative turn. Um, did you find it easy or difficult to talk about your mental health?
Oh, at the time we never talked about it. I mean, it's only afterwards now, looking back and after the transformation. I mean, I think we probably joked and laughed about it, just like, yeah, we're really messed up here, but sort of with that hint of like a badge of honor, and laughing to cover up that we know this isn't quite true. But yeah, no, we were talked about nothing. I mean, it was almost a sign of weakness. Back, I think things have changed a little now, and if anything, I think they go too far in the other direction sometimes, with people sort of on social media talking about it, exaggerating for likes. Now, I never want to, there's so many genuine stories, I don't ever want to knock it, but I think there is some of the reverse as well, of going over the top for attention. And there's
Oh,
that kind of that.
yeah, 100%. I talk about this all the time. I never want to do anything for clicks and likes. I mean, and we live in a world now where followings matter on social media. They open doors. We know that, but I'll never try and put anything out there that I don't truly believe in myself. Everything I come on social media for, I put out for good and positivity. I think there's a lot of rubbish on social media that's negative, and it has negative impacts on your mental health. I don't want that to happen. I want it to be a positive experience. Everything I put out there is positive. By using your negative experience, I'm hoping it can create a positive
Yeah.
experience for other people.
No, 100%. Yeah, yeah.
And it's about being real as well, and not being fake. And look, if you come up and come on podcasts or you talk on social media and you talk bullshit, people will catch you out. I think that's an inevitability. Would you agree with that, Tom?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think in the short term it can work incredibly well for some people and get a huge amount of following. But yeah, then if the foundations aren't built, well, like we began with, on trust and integrity, eventually the house crumbles.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So obviously we've moved through these difficult times. Any other kind of incidents that you can think of that you've talked about in the book where it's gone wrong? Because we like a good story, I know, good or bad. And I know you've talked
Yeah.
about one of the races there where you've ended up in a store. Well, and I don't mean that as in a good story. I just want to kind of give some sort of indication to the viewers and followers about how things can get out of control. And again, coming from a military background, I have had some crazy nights on the lash that I probably would never ever repeat. But again, looking back, they were almost cries for help in a way, trying to go extreme, outdo each other. So yeah, how did that look like for you at the worst?
Yeah. I mean, we've touched on the drinking a little. I mean, you could touch on my sexual side. As I say, the confidence was incredibly lacking. I mean, my first time was, I forget exactly, 22 or 23, and I had no idea. My sexual education had mostly come through porn, which is the worst sexual education anyone
Absolutely.
can have. And I don't think I'm the only one with, obviously you get the diagram of a penis and a vagina at school somewhere, but
Yeah.
it doesn't really help you for anything. Anyway, I don't really know how it happened. I was useless with women. I mean, if I was out, I'd be so drunk and I wouldn't have the confidence to talk to them. But somehow, my first time ended up with a 33-year-old Slovenian woman. And I ended up, who obviously had a significant amount of confidence and experience. I had zero. But I thought, well, I've got to get this monkey off my back. At some stage, sooner or later, I ended up back at hers. Erectile dysfunction, just so scared, so terrified, nothing happened. I did, and to build on this, I do talk about this in the book, but I managed to get the condom on anyway. Everything went terribly. I had to, you have to be honest in that situation. This is my first time. I don't know what I'm doing. I just want to get out of here. Understandably, she agreed. Anyway, I needed to piss afterwards. So I walked up the road, found the corner, began to piss, and was wondering why it felt like I was pissing and no urine was coming out. I realized they still had the condom on, and it was it was just
Okay.
filling up with urine. So that was my failed first time. And the erectile dysfunction stuff continued for quite a while. Eventually, I turned to Cialis, similar product to Viagra, until again I really began to heal things and turn things round. From the age of 30 onwards, I'm 37 now, and um, yeah, it was a long, slow journey to begin to make that shift. And again, it was a psychological problem. There was no physical problem. It's just the confidence and the lack of self worth and the fear just overriding natural things happening.
Well, we kind of we're all guilty of joking about kind of sex and stuff and being a bit lighthearted with it, but I feel like the older you get, and weirdly, I had this conversation with a similar sort of conversation with my partner this morning about something flashed up on social media, and it was about. I think it's a new series that's coming out where they're taking a load of virgins and putting them on an island. I don't know if you've seen it advertised, and it's people that struggle with the confidence in the sex thing. And it did make me giggle. I'm not going to lie, and I thought, God, you're really putting yourself out there. And then I kind of had this realization that the older you get, and you've not lost your virginity. I mean, I was quite late. I'm quite open about it. I was 17, which is considered quite late anyway, but 22 is kind of late. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you're placed with a lot of pressure on, you've got to, in a man as well, it's like there's an emphasis on the size of your penis because of porn. There's an emphasis on sexual performance, an unrealistic sort of pressure on you from porn, and that's only getting worse. I'm of an era. I'm 46. You know, we joke about hedge porn, if you remember, where there was a bit of newspaper, a page 3 girl on a bit of newspaper in the hedge bottom. That
Yeah.
was the glimpse of. You didn't have the internet. Um, Thankfully, but the generations growing up today, it's so easily accessible. And like you quite rightly said, it's the false sort of pretenses. So the pressure on you as a 22-year-old, and again, you're not alone with the sexual dysfunction. It happens psychologically, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. It's for me one, yeah, completely. And there are studies that show that porn's not helping at all with that. And I think I watched porn solidly from 13 to 30. One of the best decisions I ever made was giving up porn. It doesn't even cross my mind now. And I talk about but often jump to the alcohol and the gambling. They're more obvious problems, but to me porn really is an addiction and really is a big problem that's plaguing society these days, and it's not talked about and understood. And when you've watched that and there are those expectations, and then it comes to your turn in the bedroom, and well, suddenly it's more you're just trying to learn and get by. I mean, it does cause a big block and a mess inside your head. I mean, there was more to that, it's the deep founded, unrooted self confidence as well that I was struggling with, but the porn on top wasn't helping at all.
No, it is a difficult one, and because it's everywhere. I mean, I know that they are cracking down now with this. They've been on about that. You have to. I mean, that's enough to put anyone anyway. Going on a porn site and having to take a picture of yourself before you go on it. It's almost like, no, I'm okay. I'm good.
Yeah.
But they are trying to crack down on it and stop it being exposed to young people, because I feel like it's very, very damaging. And I think this is part of the toxic masculinity as well, because you see there's a lot of porn out there that treats women as sexual objects, and the other way around as well. It's a bit of both, but in more cases than not, tends to be women being objectified as these sexual objects and treated in not a very nice way. So the younger generation are watching that and thinking that's the norm. That's how you treat a woman, and that's how you perform in a bedroom and stuff. And reality is very, very different. Um, so I do want to touch on kind of the mental health aspects, if that's okay with you, because all these things are bound to have a negative effect on you. Have you ever been and seek professional help when it comes to mental health? And if so, or what sort of things have you struggled with your mental health, would you say?
I never, as I say, I seek professional help? I did visit a psychologist 3 or 4 times, but it didn't really work out for me. This is when I was sort of trying to turn things round. So I've never really gone down the professional route. What I did, as I said, I was functional and I've ended up in Colombia now. It may seem strange to people that I've come, given Colombia's reputation of drugs and narco. This is where I've come to be clean, but a lot of people do. It's a magical country and a lot of people get clean here. I realized I had to change my environment. I mean, and I don't want to blame anyone I was around. They're good people I'm still in touch with, but I just knew I had to get away and try something new. And I had a good job at the time. I was earning money. Yeah, I lost a lot on gambling and drinking, but again, I could stop and build it back up again. And one day I just decided, fuck it, I'm going to Brazil. I've always had a thing with Latin America. I like the culture. I like the place. I ended up in Brazil. This was after the first story I talked about. So I've been there before. So this was coming back with the intention to do it in a better way. And just having that ability for me to just start new in a completely new environment allowed me to just begin to look at things from a different perspective, and just start new and start fresh. And I made the commitment in my mind. I think for me, that's where it all begins. It's a decision, no more. I'm leaving, and then you may fall back, but again, it's you catch yourself quicker, no more. Um, And from there, things really began to change. Now, for people listening, you know, they may not have the ability to just move to Brazil tomorrow, obviously, but it doesn't have to be the huge change. It's people know, well, what the little things that are bogging them down, like, well, do I need to change my job, my living situation, stop hanging around these people? The changes can be much less, much smaller, but have the same incredible effects. So, you know, it's different for every person. And for some people, there are some incredible professional help out there. I never want to knock it. There are some incredible organizations, people, military focused charities. And I'm all for that, you know, but it just wasn't the way I personally began to make that change. And, you know, as maybe we'll come on to at a later date, psychedelics in a secure, responsible, safe medical environment helped me massively as well.
Yeah, no. Well, I'd like to hear about it now if you've got the time, Tom. I mean, I'm kind of, I'm not against ayahuasca. I'm not against any of the stuff that helps. I know it is big in the veterans community, and it's been helping with PTSD in a way that reprograms your brain. I know a little bit about it. I have been approached by a charity to document in the Amazon an ayahuasca kind of trial in the future. Um, but yeah, tell me about that journey, and well, tell me from start that journey, that decision, the research you did, um, out your experiences while doing it, and has it helped you? Quite simply. So yeah, how did you figure out
Yeah.
or research it? You know.
So it took some time. I think I ended up in Brazil at 23 or 24, moved on to Colombia and just managed through time. I fell back, I made mistakes, but you know, through the journey, with that commitment, decision, being more honest with myself and people, I left the drinking and gambling behind. I went back to London after a year and a half. Sort of fell back on some things, never to the levels of before, but I was struggling. I wasn't finding like who I was or my community or my network there because a lot of it was built on the stuff from before, and I knew I didn't want to go back there. So after a while, I came back to Colombia. I was working sort of online with an American company then, 9 years ago. It was pretty flexible and was I sort of beginning to sort my life out. I sort of beginning to have the white picket fence. I had a girlfriend. I had a decent job. Lived in a nice place, a good apartment. I was keeping myself relatively healthy, but I still felt I hadn't dealt with those like big inner demons. Like there was still a lot of that there, and I hadn't like replaced the negative with the positive. I hadn't found like what I was looking for. And I had the guy I currently work with had tried ayahuasca before. I'd had listened to like Joe Rogan and kept hearing it appear here or there. And one day I was just hiking above Medellin with some friends and thinking, this is what I love, like being out in nature, living healthily. But I was dead inside. I was struggling with energy. I wasn't feeling happy. I was bored. I was tired. And it just crossed my mind, conversations I'd heard and had about ayahuasca. And I just got on Google, searched for an ayahuasca place near Medellin, which is where I'm at now. Found a great place, a good person. They spoke English, which I like because my Spanish wasn't great. And I didn't want to go into this environment like not being able to communicate. And yeah, I ended up at a week-long ayahuasca retreat. Really, 2 weeks later, I'm sort of an all or nothing kind of guy, as you worked out. And yeah, I can dive more into that experience now if you'd like.
Yeah, please do, because I've heard stuff, and I want to. You know, I've had a member of the SAS on here, a guy called Lindsay Bruce, quite a famous member of the SAS, that swears by it, and he's been and done two in South America, two ayahuasca journeys, as he calls them, or as they're kind of known. And he was trying to explain it to me. And for someone that I've never really touched on, look, I'm no angel. I had a misspent youth. I've done drugs as a teenager before I joined the military, but I never was one for the hallucinogenics. So I can't grasp the kind of the stuff that he was telling me. But I'd love to hear your sort of take on it and what you experienced.
Yeah, I always mention this for somebody like when you ask, well, what's ayahuasca like? And somebody just says it's so hard to describe like with words. I used to find that like the most annoying answer in the world. Just like, tell me. And now, like having done it, it's just like, it's so hard to describe. Like, I get what they were talking about. I
Mm.
mean, I used to consider it a drug, and with my past, as we've just talked about, I was super nervous about it. I'd had some real bad experiences of psychoactive substances in the past, bought off the street, like in the worst possible way. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. So, where I did it was with two certified doctors in ancestral and ayahuasca medicine, very responsible, secure environment set up to take care of you in like the most professional way. And went through the experience, and sort of the first night it was just kind of nice, some light visions. The second night I just went in some like crazy abstract world of like being back in my mother's womb and then coming out into the world and like growing up and evolving from a baby into a child into an adult and like reliving some of these traumatic experiences and trying and seeing them from a different way, from a different realm, but not like judging them and feeling bad about them, like forgiving myself for the mistakes I made. And it was just a constant journey of like reliving things and forgiving and learning. And it was super tough. Like I had the third and the fourth days, I had to ask for help from the people there because it was just what I was experiencing was just so strong and so like every emotion in one go. But through that journey and going through it, I sort of walked out the retreat like almost with like the past forgiven and like a fresh future again to walk into. Now, it's not a magic pill. I've seen many people go into ayahuasca retreats and having amazing experiences, and then they go back to their life how it was before. The magic of the ayahuasca only comes when you see the forgiveness and you see the lessons, and then you still have to go out there and apply them and make changes and forgive yourself and forgive other people and mess up along the way. I've still made a million more mistakes like anyone, but just when you do, it's just the ability almost to forgive is quicker and to get back on the straight path again is quicker. And it's hard for people to believe sometimes. I get it. I do go into a lot more detail in the book, but that gives sort of the 3 or 4 minute snapshot of it.
Yeah, I have. Again, I'm fairly open to anything, and I've heard so many people talk about that. Everyone experiences a very similar experience of going to a certain realm or reporting similar findings, which sort of says different than what you'd expect of taking other hallucinogenics. If you take mushrooms, for example, everyone has a different experience. Everyone sees stuff that's completely unique to them. But would you say that with the ayahuasca, people report a lot of the same kind of things, don't they?
Yeah, it's sort of the same kind of things, but then it's so personal as well. So sort of you come to this realm to see things from a new perspective. Sort of, I don't know, a way to describe it could be looking down on your past life from above, but sort of as like going to like the Eastern philosophy of like the observer, the witness, and just being able to see it play out in front of you. Now, whilst everyone's stories their own and different, and the way they see it comes from their own perspective, it sort of is that the ability to re-see and relive and forgive and let go of the traumas that were leading to these decisions. And, I know in the military, Ibogaine, there's the Amazon documentary. It's something I've never tried, so I'm not really confident to talk about it. But, they experience a lot of the same. And there's so many phenomenal veteran stories out there. and as we have to put the disclaimer in, please get the professional advice, and make sure you go into a secure, safe place. It's not for every veteran, and it's not for every, well, non-civilian, so to speak. But if you do find yourself feeling that there could be that possibility for you, do the research and look into it and get some good guidance first, and then if it feels like it's for you, go for it.
No, absolutely. And no, I agree with you too. If you're gonna do ayahuasca or any of the things that are very similar to it, do your research. It is definitely not for everyone. And if you're going to go and do it, research the best places to do it, accredited, and people, good reviews, all that kind of stuff. Because again, it can be. I know if you've got underlying heart problems and underlying health problems, it can have a negative effect. So yeah, we're not sort of saying go out and do it, but in reality is do your research, have a look at it. It might be something that might help you. Um,
Yeah.
so talk to me about the book. At what point did you think? Because I find this topic um, interesting because so many men, I think, will relate to what you were talking about, whether they want to admit it or not. They will sit there, they will watch this and go, "Fuck me, I was in that situation." And I'm sitting here now, Tom, thinking, I've been there. I was in a culture for many, many years that was drinking, fighting, just because it was like, yeah, 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 we're part of this gang, we're part of this cult of the paras, and after that as well. And I thought it were great at the time. And I look back at it now and I think I'm embarrassed by that version of myself in a weird kind of way, because that's not really who I am. I didn't know who I was. I didn't have an identity. I thought I did, but that wasn't my identity as a human. So I find this interesting. I think people will relate to it. So how did the book come about, and how did where did you get to and you think, right, I'm going to do a book?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on this in the first couple of pages. So the book is on Amazon and wherever else. It's called The Drunk Gambler with Erectile Dysfunction, Searching for Something More. So a pretty out there title that says a lot in itself. And honestly, I couldn't sleep one night, and this idea came to my mind. Write a book, knowing that so many people can relate to my journey. And if it can help a few people, great. And if some people are just entertained by it, then great as well. And I just wanted to write it just from an honest perspective, not from a place of like preaching. Who am I to tell somebody else how to live their life? I mean, listen to all that I did in my past. But I just thought, yeah, I know people can relate to this. I know there are so many people struggling, whether they're veterans or civilians, with isolation, with problems with porn. And I really wanted to get into the sexual stuff because I think there's a lot out there on gambling, drugs, um, and alcohol. Um, but I don't think there's that much that brings them all together with the like all the sexual shame and embarrassment that I was struggling with. And with how isolated people are these days, I knew people could relate. So I just wanted to get it out there for that reason. I'm a bit of a, as you can tell, I'm a bit of a crazy extreme guy, and I just like kind of pushing myself and saying, well, let's just tell my story from 100% brutal honesty. And then for the metaphor, like I'm literally an open book. Well, what are you going to say about me now? Like I've written all about in the book, nobody could come in 10 years with a newspaper article about me if I got famous about my past, because I've already put it out there. So it's just about that. I enjoyed the process. I found it quite therapeutic, quite hard at times as well, touching on some of the stuff I used to live. And then, yeah, just with the hope that if people can relate to it, well, yeah, hopefully they get some benefit too.
No, fantastic. And again, it's not an easy thing to do as a man because of the stigma. Now, we talk about the stigma with mental health, but there's a stigma around um, sort of erectile dysfunction? Of course there is. There's a stigma around drinking culture. There's a stigma around drugs where, people don't want to admit it. They don't want to talk about it. And I'm a big believer in that people talk about it and share their experiences, other people will go, well, if he can do it, I can be open about it. And there's nothing wrong with being open. But again, we still live in this world where there's this stigma about opening up, and it's a sign of weakness and it's a sign of embarrassment, um, especially with sensitive topics like erectile dysfunction. 9 times out of 10, they're a psychological thing, not a physical, aren't they? Um, so, yeah, no, hats off for coming on and talk about. Where can you find a book? Can we find it on Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, so that you'll find it just typing in "The Drunk Gambler with Erectile Dysfunction," searching for something more. The website's thedrunkgambler.com, so you'll find more on there. And yeah, if there's something you relate with, yeah, please have a read, and I hope you enjoy it.
No, absolutely. And the links will be in the bio to this video. So go check it out. Before we finish, Tom, I have one final question for you that I like to ask a lot of the guests, or I've started to ask a lot of the guests. And that's quite simply, there's someone out there that's struggling with gambling, erectile dysfunction, alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be. What advice would you offer and give to them?
Yeah, the big ones, if I can turn it around, and if anyone else can turn it around, so can you. It's get honest about it. I know it's difficult at times, and it's about that real desire to change. If it's within you and you feel it burning within you, go for it. There'll be mistakes along the way. You'll mess up for sure, but forgive yourself and get back on. It comes from that desire and that faith deep down, and that being honest and open, firstly with yourself, but secondly with the people around you who you care about, who it's important to share with. And from that foundation, there's a lot of hope to build on.
No, nice one, Tom. Well, thank you very much for your insight into your kind of life, your failings, your mistakes. I love a good story. I love it when people turn their lives around and then on their up. So please keep up the good work. I hope you keep continuing to go from strength to strength. But it has been an absolute pleasure chatting to you.
Thanks so much, Chris. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you to yourself for all your years of service to the world, and for every veteran and, well, current serving person who's listening. Thank you for your service and dedication.
Bless you, Tom. A real pleasure. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.